If I want you and I like you, I'm gonna get you. I got to have you. That's how I was in I. If I like you and I want you, I got you. That's booty talk. That's real talk.
Remember him? That's the Booty Warrior from the Boondocks, Season 3, Episode 9 in 2010. One of the most memorable characters from the show. But a lot of people don't know that Fleece is actually a very real person. The Boondocks episode was inspired by a 2008 episode of MSNBC's Locked Up Raw series. In it, Fleece immortalized himself in American meme culture with a description of life as a homosexual in the Kentucky prison system. His preferred method of procuring intimacy and a passionate monologue about how access to his fellow man's posterior is more important than water. Fleece inspired a generation of American boys and men to stay the f*** out of prison. Today, Fleece is in his mid-60s and is a free man. Even more shockingly, he claims he has never been convicted of a single sex crime in his life and isn't a registered sex offender either. Like every other newly released notorious criminal, he's been doing the podcast rounds, and his stories are so funny that one forgets how horrific the rape epidemic is and was in America's prisons. Also, many times he adamantly states that, number one, there ain't no shame in this game, and number two, everything in his interviews is documented true. So here's the backstory to his infamous interview, how he became Kentucky's most notorious inmate, and the life and times of the Booty Warrior. Fleece Johnson was born into abject poverty in Lebanon, Kentucky. As a child, his family moved to the Southwick Projects in the west end of Louisville, the most violent projects in Louisville at the time. Fleece's dad beat him a lot, so he sabotaged things in the house as revenge when he was a kid.
So, I used to have this problem when I was growing up, when my daddy and them used to whoop me. Like, don't put your hands on me, bro. I'm gonna get you back. Mama go open the refrigerator, the whole door come out. Daddy lay in the bed will fall apart. They know I did. I tore up shit. Tore up all my sister's Bobby dolls, my brother's train set. And my brother, Jelly, to this day, he don't know. I'm gonna tell you about Jelly, I did it. He had a little Snoop dog, a little, cotton, little made out of cotton. And I tore it up and hung it on the door. That was his favorite little thing. And I thought about he was tore up about it. He ready to die over that little thing. All these, brother, I did it. Man, you know. Man, you know.
This habit would turn him into a vindictive individual and would hurt him years later. At age 12, Fleece stole his first car. Fleece and his friends would steal cars, taunt police, and make them chase them for fun.
And I used to steal cars. I had a little gang. And we steal cars and we'll go mess with the police. You know, I drive right up to the parking lot. When they change shift, run into one of them, cuss and make them chase us. And we had a position where we'll take them through the alley to initiate to get in our gang. You would have to do this. Bring the police through the alley. We be sitting on the cut. And when we see your car drop up out the alley, we know they right in back of you. So when they come out of the alley, we'll hit them, flip their cars and shit.
Eventually, all of Fleece's gang members were caught, and they ratted on Fleece. But young Fleece was hard to catch.
And then one night on 34th Street, they blocked the whole street off in just a horseshoe, right? And there's about 30, 40 police cars out there, and all of them just opened up, started shooting.
Wow.
And they thought they killed me. And the ambulance was already there, and the people in the projects came out, they heard all the gunshots and stuff. So the police told me, he said, if it wasn't for your nigga friends, we would have killed your ass. So I spit on him in the back of the police car. Well, he went for his gun, and the other police that was driving, took his hand off the steering wheel to try to stop him. And we on Broadway, the car's going like it, and so they called back up and they took me out of there and put me in another police car, right?
They only spared Fleece because there would have been too many witnesses. The shooting made the front page of a Louisville newspaper the next day. Fleece was taken to a children's detention center because he was still a child, and the next day his dad came to the station.
So we could have got some money over there. But my daddy, he wants to go up to the police station, tell him that he ain't gonna file no lawsuit, that he taught me a lesson, and all that. He was just talking stupid, and I just got up and ran up out of the little office room, came outside, two police was talking, and one of them's car was started, and I jumped and stole it right there and there, right? Stole the police car, right?
Right. At age 13, he started carrying nickel-plated .45s that he used to rob craps games, dope fiends, and prostitutes. And by age 14, he had a reputation as a feared thug in Louisville that wasn't scared of the police. When Fleece was caught at age 15, he was such a nuisance that they sent him to the penitentiary regardless of a law in place preventing juveniles from being sent to adult prisons. He was locked up for 16 robberies, 8 shootings, and a car theft, and he took a 12-year plea agreement. He was first sent to LaGrange Reformatory, and despite having 2 brothers, cousins, and friends in prison already, he was terrified. Inside, Fleece bumped into a lot of people he had robbed on the streets, so he would fight often. Not long into his bid, Fleece noticed that every time that he'd go shower, someone would follow him and watch him.
I'm in the shower, and I picked up on it, and he was over rubbing his soap all over his chest, just staring at me like that. So I'm like, what's wrong with this nigga, right? So I'm looking this way, so every time I turn around, this nigga at me like this. And I seen all them muscles and shit, right? Then I look, I said, hold on, is this nigga hard? You know, his shit is out, right?
Fleece feared him and knew he definitely couldn't take him in a fight. One day, Reggie decided to take his advances a step further.
So one day, you know, this went on and on. I ain't never said nothing to him about it. To be truthful, I was sort of like afraid of this nigga. For this nigga was this huge, man. I just said, God damn, I can't do nothing with this nigga here, man. Just ignore him, right? But one day he came out of the shower and brushed against me naked and said, excuse me, but I know nigga did it on purpose, right? So I said, okay, that's it.
Fleece knew what was coming and decided he had to retaliate violently. At the commissary, he bought a glass painting jar, emptied it, broke it into pieces, and wrapped one of the shards in a towel.
When I broke it, my hands are shaking. I said, man, I don't even know if I can go through with this or not, right? I broke the glass. I said, so I walked back in there. I said, if he touched me, let him touch me. Just don't walk in there and hit nobody, right? So he was doing his hair, slutting that big afro, and nigga was blowing it out. He said, hey, I ain't say nothing. He said, you. I said, who, me? I had the glass up on a towel, right?
Yeah.
I said, what you want? He said, can you, he said, when I do my hair like that, can you put a rubber band on there? I said, no. Man, I ain't to put, I never have. He said, what you mean? I said, no, man, I'm not putting shit on there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He said, grab my hands and then like, he said, they smooth.
This is in the shower?
No, this is in the shower room. He's not still in the shower. He's out of the shower. See, when you come out of the shower, they got a little platform right here where you can put your stuff up on, and they got mirrors.
Yeah.
You can look in the mirror and comb your hair out and all this stuff.
I got you. It's kind of like a locker room.
Man, I stabbed shit out of that nigga. I cut him with that thing and ran.
Fleece still doesn't know what happened to Reggie after he sliced him up. For that infraction, Fleece was sent to Kentucky State Penitentiary, aka Eddyville, a maximum security prison. February 18, 1977, police arrived at Eddyville. Eddyville was considered the worst prison in America at the time, and police firmly believed he was sent there to get killed. By his 16th birthday, he was the only teenager in there. The rest were aged 30 through 50. According to police, the entire prison was white and racist when he got in, and he'd see racial abuse and whites calling blacks the N-word often. But he was even more surprised at how docile the black inmates were. They wouldn't do a thing about it. More shockingly though, police saw men being intimate with each other for the first time and men dressed in women's lingerie. He learned that at Eddyville, the city had the most powerful inmates, and defending them could have gotten you killed by their husbands. That and they had to be addressed as females with titles of ma'am or miss. An unwritten Eddyville rule was you couldn't eat cheese because people would call you a rat for it. Police didn't care, and at the cafeteria he asked for cheese. He was served a whole block.
So when I get at the table, dude I knew, he said, man, get that off your tray, bro. They gonna think you're a rat. I said, who? He said, man, don't nobody eat. I said, man, I don't care. I'm gonna eat it, right? So when I heard the word rat, and I looked and found the table that it was coming from, it was about 4 of them real tough white guys. I went over and mopped that table, bro, went to the hole. So I guess they thought I was not gonna come back to the yard.
And when he got out, an older black man told him that he admired what he did and handed him a butcher knife for protection. He'd need it. Later, he'd see the same group of white guys he attacked. They were looking for him.
So I said, forget it. I said, I'm gonna die today, but I'm gonna take somebody with me. So I just pulled the knife out and ran straight, just running towards them. But before I got up on them, they all scattered. They was telling, hey, hold up, young blood. Hey, hold it, man. We didn't come for that, bro. We didn't come to fight. We didn't, hey, man, what you did, man, we admire what you did, man. I mean, I ate cheese all my life. I ain't know, you know. That was the first thing I changed in that prison.
Dang, as soon as you got there.
Yeah, I changed that right there.
And you was a young guy.
Yeah.
The whole situation gave him a rep in jail as the only black guy who would stand up to whites, and violently. Soon, police would also learn that Eddyville was crawling with some aggressive freak that hadn't had some nookie in decades. They didn't go about satisfying their needs the consensual way either. One time, the prison had put him in a double cell with a big dude named Doc.
Can I stand up?
Yeah, you can stand up.
Okay. Picture.
Well, I can't, well, yeah, just.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
This is the wall.
Uh-huh.
The wall already had a hole in it.
Okay.
What he did, he took a plastic thing, like a balloon light, and blowed it up and put some baby powder in it and blowed it up and tied it, right?
Okay.
Pressed it up and fitted it in the hole.
Uh-huh.
So now he took a little sheet like it, spread some cement over it, and when it got hard, he did like that, taped it around the hole, and then painted it. Well, you can't even tell a hole is in a wall.
Right.
So at the time, when he wants your booty, he gonna argue with you about it, and then run his hand through that thing, and when you hear that thing pop, and he pull his arm out with all that white shit on it, and shit floating all in the air, you gonna think he done ran his fist through a goddamn concrete wall. So who wants to fight somebody like that?
Oh,
So,
I get it now.
So I'm sitting in the cell. He said, hey. I looked up at him. His eyes is red too. Big old, like I said, nose about the size of my fist. Just a big black ugly. And he said, this cell is as much as yours as it's mine. I ain't say nothing. But he had some shorts on that had a bunch of holes in them. Every time he moves his leg, his thing will pop out one of them holes and shit, right? You know, acting like he's all, excuse me. He'll put it back in, then he'll move and it'll pop out again. I said, hold up, man.
Later at Chow, police told his friends about Doc, and they handed him a small paring knife. He had already discarded the butcher knife.
So I took it in there, So now he got on some different type of shorts. These right here, the holes is like long like this, so a lot of it gonna fall out of these, right? So I'm sitting down on the bed. So he's walking around and he said, the hell with this. So I looked over at him and see what he's talking about, right? He said, I'm sick of it. He had a freak book. He said, I'm sick of reading this. So turn up the freak book, right? He said, I want man's real. So I ain't saying nothing. Well, what this talking about, right? I sat down and right. And he said, you hear what I'm saying? I said, what? He said, I'm tired of it. I gotta fuck, son. I said, shit, who this talk to? So the door's locked, right? I said, shit, you got me locked in with this would kill me in here. I was thinking, right? So he said something. He said, his thing popped out. So I said, hey, and it's hard this time. When it popped out, it was up. So I said, hey man, why don't you show me some respect? He said, what? He said, the only thing I'm gonna show you is this big black up in your ass, nigga. And he hit that hole, man. That thing said, boom. And he was shaking his arm like, I could have sworn that I saw the wall shake, right?
And you had never seen that before, though?
No.
Okay.
I thought this motherfucker did this. I mean, I thought he actually ran his hand through this wall.
Yeah.
And it looked like his arm was stuck. And when he pulled it out, I seen all that white stuff over there. I didn't know it was baby powder. I thought it was cement. And he ran up on me. He said, stand up. Stand up. Do I gotta fight you? Look at that. Hey, I couldn't even think, man. I like, I'm gonna give him some ass he ain't never had in his life, right? So I'm trying to figure out, no, seriously, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna fit this in. I mean, I'm looking at this shit, and it's like that. I'm like, shit, how can I fit that? I don't even know if I can fit that in me or something, right? He said, I said stand up. So I'm like, and I did like that because I'm left-handed. But I had that knife right here. Oh. And when I moved it, it stuck me. I said, oh. Now I realize I got it. At first,
because you was just panicking.
It just, hey, I'm going to bend over any way you want me. And you're going to get some good ass, bro. I'm going to give it to you. Now, for real, bro, I'm not fighting this. But when I realized I had that knife on me, I did like that and sliced him. I sliced the fuck. Hey, excuse me.
No. You can say whatever you want to say.
I sliced this man so bad, man. He couldn't even get up. And he was screaming and all them inmates and shaking their door, hollering for the guard. So when the guard come up here, I'm over by the toilet, holding that knife, and I'm shaking it like that. I'm shaking it. They say, put it down, put the weapon down, put it down, just give it to us. It's gonna land up. They were talking, and he was right there laying by the door. He was just in a pool of blood and he couldn't even get up. And I'm like, I told him, I'm not putting nothing down. Get him out of this cell first. What do you want me to put the knife down? Let this I'm thinking he can get up and destroy me, right?
Yeah.
So they opened the door and they put him on a stretcher. The nurses, everybody, I'm talking about, man, I ripped him. Yeah. And then
how did you?
I threw the knife over her.
No. I'm saying, where'd you slice him at?
Everywhere, bro. Ankles, up here, right there, all in the back, arm, leg. I was hitting him everywhere, right? You're not gonna get up.
Fleece was taken to the hole but wasn't charged for the attack because the guards knew about Doc's reputation. Also, at the time, being black and getting seriously hurt meant one less mouth for the prison to feed, so the guards couldn't care less. Fleece doesn't know if he killed Doc or not, but the story did go around and now Fleece was known as someone not to mess with. By the time Fleece reached his 30s, he had never experienced any kind of intimacy with a woman. He'd beat his meat about 8 times a day and had done so for over a decade. He'd do it to calm down his violent attitude. According to Fleece, Curiosity in men's prison devolved from beating off to nudie magazines to curiosity about sick. And Fleece himself had arrived at the final stage. He wanted the real thing. Fleece wasn't gay at all when he got in, and states that he was repulsed by it for years. But he thinks that anyone locked up for long enough will arrive at the same conclusion that he did. One day, a new inmate landed at Eddyville, and Fleece took a liking to him.
I was in there by myself. I said, I'm getting in the shower first. Sometimes it's better soon they open it up, get in and get out. Because you're going to see a lot of stuff in there, right? And so, when I heard somebody in the shower, so I turned around, and it was him.
The one you was cussing out?
I could see him from the back. Ass was like, God damn. All right. Shit. It was like setting up. Motherfucker like setting up, and yeah, you know how you put that soap go down your back, and it go, you can see the soap go up. I said, shit. So I looked out the window and shit, made sure wasn't nobody else coming in and take a shower. I said, fuck this shit, man. I said, oh. He looked back at me, and I looked at him real mean, like, right? You know, real serious look, right?
Yeah.
So I said, shit, fuck it. I went over, I said, he said, yes. I said, can I get some of this? He said, you don't mess around, do you? I said, man, shut the fuck up. Can I get, I said, I'm gonna tell you what, you tell somebody, I'm gonna whoop your goddamn ass, right? You better not tell nobody shit. That was my first time. And it was in a man's ass, bro. I closed my eyes like that. I said, I ain't even know it could felt like it. That shit is good. You know, I ain't never had none.
Yeah.
Coming in as a child, man, you know what I'm saying? I'm giving this motherfucker a baby or something, man. Shit. I'm gonna give this motherfucker a baby, man. That's as good as fuck, man. And so, I asked him, I said, God damn. I mean, my legs and shit was shaking, man. The first time I said, man, I'm shaking and shit. I looked up at him, he said, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm all right.
Over the years, due to exogenous hormones smuggled into the prison, evolved into having female shapes and even breasts on top of feminine behaviors. Fleece's appetite became more voracious. He became an expert at psychologically breaking newbies and even fake tough guys. He describes his past self as the booty master and a Casanova in that motherfucker. For his ability to talk a man out of his ass, he'd get it without having to fight or even ask. He'd pay, barter, and accept ass as payment for debts owed to him as well. With fresh meat, Fleece would do research and background checks on incoming inmates from the prison's move sheet to know their crimes and who they were connected to. And for the newbies who weren't connected or weak, he wholeheartedly believed that he was saving them.
Man, I done saved a lot of people in that prison.
I believe it.
People tell my wife all the time, he saved my life and all that. She said, did you save, you actually saved that guy? I said, yeah. She said, you are so good. But she don't realize I saved his life because I was him. That's why I saved his goddamn life. I didn't save it. Ain't nothing free, man, shit. Put my life on the line and all that, what we're talking about.
Fleece's mind was fully geared toward life in the pen, and he wanted a wife. He wound up having consistent relationships in prison and was willing to kill over the men he was seeing. Over the years, he'd see a lot of gangsters turn into booty bandits during their sentences. Eddyville had over 150 bandits that would prey on any weakness. They didn't care how you looked. Respect is paramount in prison, and Fleece was willing to fight anyone over any slight. And in a fight, his mentality was to seriously maim or injure to prevent retaliation.
What happened to your teeth?
Oh, I got in my teeth, I had a full set of teeth. I mean, perfect. Pure white, just perfect. Well, I'm in a hole, so I'm getting in a fight with this they said been in the army. Everybody telling me, don't fight this man. This nigga's no judo, karate. I said, fuck all that shit. I try whoever. You disrespect me, right? You just got to whoop me. So when we came out of our cell, I ran up on this nigga and I swung. Man, I hit with everything I got, bro. And nigga told me, oh, baby, you gotta come with something better than that. And the nigga come out with some army shit. And that thing, you know, he got me. I try to hit him and, you know, like the way we growed up, you pop a motherfucker, just scoop him. He's down, it's over. Man, I tried to scoop his nigga, he got me in a headlock, bro. I mean, a perfect motherfucking headlock that I couldn't get out of. I mean, perfect lock. And he was choking me. He choked me so hard, I fought it, bro. And that's when I panicked, right? I said, this nigga's killing me. And all these motherfuckers standing around, I'm waiting on the motherfucker breaking shit up. Motherfuckers standing around just looking and shit, right? So I bit him. I bit this motherfucker. And when I bit him, he hollered, ouch. And he swung and hit me right here, and I thought he broke my jaw right here. I couldn't open my mouth, and that made me panic even more. So I'm doing like that, trying to break my mouth away from him, and then realize that I done tore all this open. I locked on this man.
Like a pit bull.
Yeah, I locked on him. Tore all this shit open. So here's what happened.
And he was a guard, right?
No, he's an inmate.
He was an inmate?
Yeah. One of them big, massive motherfuckers that come out of the military. They got a lot of them motherfuckers in prison. Motherfuckers come out of the army and shit, right? And so, when I seen the damage that I did, he got 32 stitches. I said, God damn. Shit. That's what I want to start doing, biting these motherfuckers, man.
Fleece was impressed with how much damage a bite could do, so the next time he bit someone's ear off. Later, he was pissed when he saw the same dude with his ear stitched back on. That's when he decided he'd start swallowing anything he bit off. Fleece bit lips, cheeks, and ears off of people, and even once bit a dude under his armpit and paralyzed his arm. No one wanted to fight him after that. After 34 biting incidents, the prison commissioner came down to Eddyville.
She said, hey, buddy, Frankfurt sent me up here because they want me to tell you, the next time you bite somebody, they're going to take all your teeth. I said, that's bullshit. They can't take all my teeth. That's against the law and all that shit, right? She said, well, I'm just telling you. She said, you got 34 bites.
Damn.
And I'm talking about motherfucker, I done bit him up here, took all this off. And then they can't give it back. Motherfuckers, I took their top lips and shit off.
And you swallowing this shit?
Yeah, they kill like this, no lip. Yeah, I swallowed it. You goddamn right. You ain't getting it back. You ain't sewing shit on you.
Because the motherfucker got his ears sewed back on.
Yeah, he got his ears sewed back on. So I'm like, fuck that shit, bro.
Fleece didn't take them seriously, and he bit 2 more people after that.
So she come back, and a guard come up to my cell and say, hey, you got a visitor. I'm thinking it's somebody, my family or something, family coming to see me, you know. They took me down at the hospital and put me in what they call a restraint chair. Well, you sit in the chair, they can handcuff you to the chair. You know, it's made like that. So she come around the corner, she called me her buddy. She said, my buddy. She said, didn't I tell you? I already knew what they gonna do, so I said, look, whatever y'all gonna do, do it. So a nurse came in, gave me a shot, put me to sleep. So when I woke back up, they done took all my teeth out and sold my gums. Yeah.
To this day, Fleece's teeth are considered a lethal weapon. and he isn't legally allowed to have teeth or get dentures. Biting incidents aside, fighting would give Fleece multiple stints in the hole. More grievous harm would result in going to court and time added to his sentence. One time he went to court and got an additional 3 years for brutally attacking a man that threw piss on him. After that, he resolved that he didn't care if he ever got out or not. Fleece just couldn't stomach any disrespect, and his original 12-year sentence would turn into 40 over the years. Over constant abuse and mistreatment, Fleece fought the guards at Eddyville just as much as he did the inmates, and often, his weapon of choice was raw doo-doo or some contraption designed to eject it. During his sentence, he claims he'd be maced and tased over 500 times, tortured, waterboarded, and once had a whole can of mace inserted and emptied into his you-know-what. Fleece was the only inmate who would stand up to the guards, and for that, he spent a lot of his sentence in the hole, no pun intended. Today, Fleece fancies himself a maverick in the world of prisoners' rights. The chronological order is unclear in his interviews, but here's some of the times Fleece single-handedly waged war against the Kentucky prison system.
Fleece Johnson held probably the reputation of being the most violent inmate in the state. He has been known to tear sinks off the wall, toilets from the floor, you name it, he's probably torn it up.
And he claims he was costing the prison system $1 million a year. He single-handedly destroyed the prison's electric chair and did $650,000 worth of damage. It even made the newspaper. For that, they built a destruction-proof cell just to contain him at the North Point Training Center. They stripped him naked and left him like that for 8 months. He had no mattress, sheets, or blanket either.
So I think, fuck it. They won't, I'm not gonna die in here. So when I got done with him, I tore the whole door off, steel door. Tore the toilet off, tore the ceiling out, knocked the whole wall out. I knocked the whole wall down.
With what?
With a bed and a toilet. I took the toilet that I done tore off the floor and kept smacking it into the wall till it knocked the hole all the way through. I tore the whole wall down.
For that, he was cuffed and taken naked to the warden's office.
He said, take all that shit off of him. His name was Dewey Showers. And if he's alive, you can see me now, Dewey, smiling at you. Yeah, he was a nasty, cocky, country, hillbilly motherfucker. He said, take all that shit off of him. They said, Warden, he might go off. He said, he ain't crazy. He said, what's this on my desk? I said, it's a 38. He said, you believe it's loaded? I said, I know it's loaded. So when they took all the stuff off of him, he said, you see that window right here? He said, you see that fence? Yonder. That was his word. If you can make it to that fence, he said, I ain't gonna shoot number one time. You can run zigzagging, turn flips or whatever. If you touch that fence, I'll put you on the streets. I said, man, I'm not climbing out that window. Fuck that. So he told him guards, throw him out. I was pitching them motherfuckers everywhere. You didn't get me out that goddamn window. So he shot the gun. Everybody froze. Now you ain't supposed to buy
He shot it where?
He shot it right there in his office. And I bet you right now to this day that bullet hole is still in her. I bet you it is.
After deeming they couldn't really do anything with him, the warden gave Fleece all of his stuff back, and even $115 worth of commissary credit. He then warned Fleece that if he acted up again, he'd shoot him. Naturally, Fleece didn't take the warning too seriously.
I walked across the loop, all the inmates walking. They said, who the fuck is this walking across the loop naked? I went to the private room, got my clothes and shit, went to the canteen. The warden already called them. They gave me all their canteen. I'm the only inmate in the hole with canteen. Cigarettes, all this shit. So, the same day they had a white girl named Karl. Me and her used to cuss each other every time she come on, old big titty, red-headed bitch. I used to fuck with her. cuss out. So when she came on, she looked in my cell and seen all this shit in her. So she stood there and told me, she said, you know what, they some weak son of a bitches. Give you all that shit back. And remember, that warden told me if I get one write-up, he's going to come down there and go off. And just without me even thinking, I said, fuck you, bitch. She said, I'm writing you up. I said, write this up. I tried to spit on her and all this shit, right? So I said, fuck it. So here they come. I went off. I took all that shit and tore it up. Gave the inmates that didn't have nothing, been in a hole, ain't ate a cookie in 6 months. I gave them all kinds of shit. I said, now I'm ready to go off, fuck them. Man, that warden come over, a little fat motherfucker. He came over though. He said, what did I tell you? I said, what? He said, didn't I tell you you do something else, what I was gonna do, shoot your black ass? I said, that's what you said, so what you gonna do? That motherfucker shot me.
In the prison?
Inside the goddamn prison. Shot me. Okay, didn't take me to the hospital. Had a prison nurse to look at. He said, just clean his wounds and bandage him up.
Fleece filed a lawsuit, but it coincided with his dad being convicted. The prison told him to drop the lawsuit, or they'd send his dad to Eddyville, where Fleece had a lot of enemies. So he dropped the lawsuit. Ronnie Youngblood was a model guard that all of the other guards looked up to, and he was primed to be the next warden. One time, Fleece and Ronnie bumped heads, and Fleece swore revenge.
He did something to me. I told these inmates, I don't care how long it takes, and I told him, I'm gonna get you, bud.
Yo, when Fleece said I'm gonna get you, that's like a death sentence.
3 years later.
I'm gonna quit my job right now.
Yeah, 3 years later. I'm on my way going home, getting ready to serve out my sentence.
And you don't forget nothing.
I didn't give a. They said, man, go home, man. What's wrong with you, nigga? You institutional? I ain't institutionalized. I said, first of all, stay out of my business. Ain't got nothing to do with you. I'm gonna get it. So I took a 5-gallon bucket of bleach and I boiled it for about 4 hours. And when he got in front of me, I went boosh. Everything fell off. I'm literally telling you, his mouth, just everything melted. So they said, they're gonna kill you. I said, well, I'm ready. I had a homemade knife and a real knife. So my door went open. Boom. I said, here they come. I stepped out in the hallway, man. I told all the inmates, I said, I'll see y'all in hell, bro. I'm out here. I said, come on, whores. All that old stuff. When they came around that corner, they had a dog. The first time I ever seen a dog in the prison, a wolf. That man took that thing off and said, kill it. That thing running down the hall like that, and I'm just standing. I said, man, what are you standing here? I ran and I grabbed my mattress off the bed, right? And trying to hold it, that thing came in that door. And I'm holding him, then here come another Rottweiler. He tried to jump over the mattress, so I had to jump off the floor onto the bed, and I'm in a corner now, right? I'm trying to stop him from getting me. Then the guard run in there, took his billy club, was trying to hit my knuckles, make me drop the mattress. And then that same thing. A knife stuck me, that was over. When I pulled that knife out, I hit that dog about 3 times, and he went over by the toilet. Then I killed the other one. The guard, when he seen the weapon, he ran. So
they let the dogs out, and then the dogs died.
Yeah, I pulled him out of my cell, but it's too late. I said, take your son of a bitch. So threw him down the hall, and here's his buddy.
In response, the prison built the Silence of the Lambs type cell for Fleece. He was in there naked for 18 months, while Ronnie spent the same 18 months in the hospital getting skin grafts. One day, Fleece would get a surprise visitor in his new cell.
So after 18 months of being in there naked, they didn't give me shit. I slept down there with the rats and the motherfucking lizards and all that bullshit. They bring this motherfucker in, the one I threw the bleach on. Fucked me up one day. It was lunch. They had brown beans and they had hamburger. No cheese, just hamburger and brown beans in a paper cup. They said, somebody's here to see you. I done forgot all about this motherfucker. I'm thinking, shit, I'll never see him again. This is 18 months later. A guard turned the corner with his face all fucked up and all this shit, and he had my food tray in his hand. They wanted him to get back at me. So he handed me my food tray, and it was a big old pile of spit in the motherfucking beans, brown beans. I mean, it was so much spit, looked like 100 motherfuckers spit in it. And a little paper cup, it was golden, just the darkest piss you can, you can smell the shit. Soon they gave me the tray, I smelled the piss, right? Pneumonia smell like raw. And he handed me my tray. So it went through my mind right then and there. Oh, this motherfucker's trying to come back. And if I show fear right here, they gonna do this shit every day. They gonna put me in torment every day. So I grabbed the tray. I didn't use a motherfucking spoon, a plastic spoon or nothing. With my bare hands, I grabbed that big old pile of beans, threw it in my mouth, all of it.
With the spit in it.
With the spit in it, and ate it. Drunk the goddamn cup of piss and said, thank you, can I get some more? It was good. And when they looked at me, they said, oh, goddamn, he quit. That's when he said, I'm done, I quit. Good. Because if I didn't do it, he would have came back, he would have been the warden, and he would have made sure every day he would have did something to me. So I say, man, I'm in a situation right now where I'm gonna have to make a judgment call. You know, I said, fuck this shit. My body, I don't get sick anyway, right?
After making a ruckus on the cell block, Fleece was subject to a particularly emasculating punishment from the guards, one too egregious to include in this video. Fleece resolved to get the guards back just as bad, and thus the shit war began.
So when they let me down for 6 hours, so when they let me up and then took me back upstairs, I told everybody what happened. I said, look, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're sick. If you got a shit, send it to me. I got something for their ass, right? So I had a 3-gallon bucket. People was passing it down. And you know, prison is nasty. They was passing the duty down in cups. And I poured in, who got some more? And then I took 3 cans of Magic Shave. You know, that stuff make your hair come out. And I took broken glass, right? Made it real broken and sprinkled it and I stirred it and I made it real thick. So when you try to rub it off, you be smearing it in yourself and the glass gonna cut into you. And the Magic Shave gonna take your hair out. Since y'all wanna call yourself shaming me, y'all gonna put me down and let no, I got something for y'all suckers, right? So the main one had a big old beard. He came past my cell. He said, you wanna speak to me? I said, yeah, boosh. Threw that whole bucket in his face. He backed up, took 2 steps backwards, fell on his knees, just started throwing up. And he did like that, and his beard came off. Half his eyebrows came off. I said, it's just. So I started it. The shit wine, Eddyville. I did. I said, I'm going to get Ed. I threw it on the governor. I spit in the governor's face. I threw it on all them people that come out of Frankfurt.
Realizing its effectiveness, he'd also keep his patented Glock dookie handy to fend off other inmates.
Well, some dude came to me with a knife. He wanted to stab me. Big black dude. Out of Lexington.
Why you want to stab you?
Oh, we had arguments, man. You have arguments in prison all the time, right? So I said, I got something for him. So he had his little dudes with him.
It seemed like they wouldn't want to mess with you at that point.
No, they didn't. Yeah, you're right. Because when I pulled them two, I carried them things around like they was 9mm, right? I had lotion bottles full with shit, right? So when I ran up on him, he ran up on me. Something like that. So I popped the lids on the lotion bottles, right? I said, what's up? So he said, oh, man, he got that shit, man. I said, well, you got a knife? And he backed up. I said, oh. And he started. So I chased him and shit, right? So that's when I realized that.
You could just leave it there. You could just put it on a, that's cool. Yeah.
That's when I realized what I had.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna fight with this.
For the attack on the warden, Fleece got 21 years in the hole. He did 12. The only inmate in the history of the prison to do so. In the prison's general population, the other inmates continued the war, and when they threw it on the guards, it would disfigure them and have them thinking they caught a disease. This went on for 6 years, and during that period, guards were scared to come on the walk or fear being shitted down. Eventually, it stopped when the authorities made it a felony which could result in additional time. While a lot of people go insane within a few months, Fleece spent the entirety of his 12 years in the hole reading, and he learned how to file a lawsuit. When he was ready to press charges for all the abuse he had faced, 3 ladies from DC came to help him fight his case. The prison offered him freedom, money, and a house, but he turned it down to combine his complaint with an already pending class action lawsuit, Kendrick versus Bland. He did this unselfishly to fight for all inmates. Fleece was allowed to testify, and he claims the ruling in favor of the inmates was made due to his testimony. In the aftermath, the guards' billy clubs were taken away, cells had to be renovated, and hospitals were built. Fleece's testimony cost the state $200 million, and they hated him for it. For a while, Fleece had been a part of Eddyville's Scared Straight program, and he had a reputation for making the kids cry. One day the warden called for Fleece and asked him to do a doc for all the juveniles in the U.S. Fleece had already done 30+ years and had no intention of ever getting out, so he thought he'd do something good for once. But he resolved to shock America instead of giving generic advice to the kids.
Johnson went on to tell our crew how he used to satisfy his sexual desires, especially during the 1970s and 80s, when he was most active and prison security was more lax.
When I see one, and he looks good to me, when I go see him, I say, you come here. I say, I'm telling you what, I like you, and I want you. And we can do it the easy way or the hard way. So the choice is yours, right? And it was always yet.
MSNBC come in and want to do an interview. So I said, okay, I'll do the interview, but I want to say what I want to say. And so while we was doing the interview, at one of them that was interviewing me, I know he was gay, right? So I touched him. I said, if you was in her, I'll you. They panicked. They called the guards. Get him out of my cell, right? But he knew what I was talking.
The episode caught the attention of the writing staff for the Boondocks, and in 2010, Season 3, Episode 9 turned Fleece into an internet celebrity. Fleece didn't have any knowledge of just how famous he was till he unexpectedly got out.
Soon as I stepped in that room, I told him to suck my dick, kiss my ass, fuck you, fuck Frank, fuck all of you. Kicked the chair over and walked out.
Regardless, to his surprise, he still got paroled. Fleece was angry about it because he was living good at the time and had no desire or intention to get out. He even feels that he had beaten the system until they kicked him out of prison. Back in the free world, Fleece had it rough when he realized just how infamous he was. People recognized him on the street. He was fired from 40 to 50 jobs after background checks, and he's even been rejected by churches. When he pieced it all together, he suspected that the prison had asked him to do the doc to destroy his name. Revenge for all the money he cost him. Fleece doesn't like his presentation in the dock and feels he was made to look like a predator so he would have a hard time on the streets. He was equally aggravated by his portrayal in the Boondocks and has still never seen the full episode. Currently, Fleece is happily married to a woman and his wife knows his whole background story. He claims he's still open to going back to crime if things don't work out. And he only misses one thing.
If there's anybody out there that can help me on some booty, contact me, please. Can you do that for me? The booty man? Can you contact my manager and let him know that you got, send us some pictures of, I want to see what you got. I don't care if it's hairy or what, I miss booty. So if you can help me, I ain't asking for a change, I ain't asking for $2 or $3, I'm asking for some booty. Can you help me out on some booty? Any of you?
Sometime in the early 2000s, a surprising story of a certain John Gotti's welfare in prison came up during a RICO trial for the Aryan Brotherhood. The Aryan Brotherhood, founded in 1964 at California's San Quentin prison, was a menace countrywide. And in 2002, AB leadership was the target of one of the largest capital punishment cases in U.S. history. The most detailed account of the incident involving Gotti came to light on a website about organized crime. As the story goes, after a denigrating racial comment, John Gotti, once America's top mobster, suffered a brutal beating at the hands of a black inmate. The story was something Gotti's lawyer denied and the prison refused to comment on entirely. Many were left to wonder how such a thing could happen to John Gotti himself, America's least fuck-wittable criminal just years prior. At the trial, it also came to light that Gotti may have paid AB $500,000 to kill the black inmate, Walter Johnson. But after years of suspense at the prison, AB never went through with the hit. John Gotti died of cancer, and Walter Johnson got away unscathed. On paper, John Joseph Gotti Jr. was a plumbing supply salesman, but he was really a millionaire mobster in New York's underworld. After spending his younger years working his way up the Gambino ranks, Gotti reached capo status in the family. He was held in high regard as an earner, credit to various hustles and outright heists, like the Lufthansa heist in 1978, portrayed in the Goodfellas movie, the largest unrecovered cash robbery in history. In 1985, Gotti and his crew would be charged with drug dealing, a cardinal sin in the mafia, and something that stood to get him killed and undo all the work he'd put in for years. So instead, Gotti plotted the murder of his boss, Paul Castellano. On a December 1985 day in Midtown Manhattan, Paul Castellano was publicly gunned down right after stepping out of his limousine. Gotti sat in his car a few feet away, notoriously drove over to view the dead bodies moments after. Gotti became the new boss, and his brashness, $1,000 suits, and media antics quickly made him one of the most famous mob bosses since Al Capone and Lucky Luciano, even earning him the nickname the Dapper Don. But Gotti became the boss at the worst time possible to be a mobster in New York. In the 80s, the RICO law and a determined effort led by Rudy Giuliani took out the commission, the leaders of New York's historic five families. And in Gotti's case, after years of incredibly heavy surveillance and countless hours worth of wiretaps, the authorities gathered enough evidence to arrest him. A huge bust and a pivotal moment in the decline of a century of Cosa Nostra tyranny in New York. In another historic turn, Gotti's underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, turned state evidence after he was betrayed by Gotti, the highest-ranking mafia member to do so at the time. Gotti would be convicted on every single charge and sentenced to life in 1992. USP Marion was built in 1963 as a replacement for Alcatraz. It was built to harbor 500 of America's worst convicts, and by the 90s, it was extremely violent, racial, and riddled with gangs. Within days of his sentencing, Gotti arrived at USP Marion. His arrival brought every single inmate out that day. They all pledged allegiance and assistance to him, and he was a prison celebrity from the jump. Perks of being a mafia folk hero, a title that would shield him from much of the violence and harm that came Anubi's way at Marion. His new home, a tiny 6x8 foot cell, consisted of a metal bed with a thin mattress, a small wash basin, 13-inch black and white TV set, and a small hot plate. He'd spend 21 hours of each day locked in there, mostly alone. From early in his stint, he'd be seen having lunch with gang leaders like Barry Mills, the Aryan Brotherhood boss. Gotti would offer cash and his criminal business sense in exchange for protection from the Brotherhood. But by 1994, the promise of protection was gone. Mills ordered AB members to stop protecting Gotti because the mob leader hadn't followed through on a promise to help Mills find an attorney to appeal an old murder conviction of his. During his stay, Gotti was known for having an aura of power and untouchableness in the prison. He fully expected to be treated as royalty. But in prison, Gotti and the mafiosos simply didn't have any muscle or backup like on the streets. All they had was their money. Gotti was known to buy a commissary for everyone in the prison to leverage his power, and it didn't take long before he felt like he didn't need the protection of the Aryan Brotherhood anymore. Walter Johnson was a bank robber from Philly serving a 10-year sentence for serial bank robbing. Johnson was incredibly strong, with an explosive temper, and was described as an overall lunatic. Marion correctional officers even once described Johnson as the most dangerous inmate they ever had come across. It would soon turn out that Walter Johnson was probably the only inmate not intimidated by Gotti either.
Back in Marion, John Gotti's there. We had homies, they putting in a ticket. Everybody yelling through the bars because everybody's locked in the cells. You know, when someone's talking, you respect the person on the microphone is what we call it. So dude was putting a ticket, John Gotti's ticket. Team getting ready to play for his first ticket. So he trying to hurry up and get his bet in before the game starts. Somebody else was already giving their bet. So John Gotti said, man, you hear me talking? Dude said, nah, I'm talking. John Gotti like, man, I don't care who talking. I'm John Gotti, take my bet. So the Muslim dude told John Gotti, yo, just wait your turn. You hear them talking? Speaking up, John Gotti's like, I don't care what you of course, now it's gonna be on. So the doors open. John Gotti got the ABs around him when he come out. They had John Gotti in the middle, so dude whooped him, but John Gotti fought back as a man. When the joint was over, John Gotti shook his hand and said, man, you got that, but I'm letting you know now, we're gonna have to fight every day.
Gotti was no stranger to prison, having been incarcerated prior, and he understood prison dynamics well. But this was years before he was a boss. Now, his new inflated ego possibly made him think he was untouchable even in the pen. Maintaining respect and avenging the slightest form of disrespect is crucial in the U.S. prison system, and racial insults warranted instant hands, so Johnson had a bone to pick with Gotti now. The next day, after the doors were opened up, Johnson, 20 years Gotti's junior, snuck up on him, punched him to the ground, and pummeled him, knowing full well exactly who he was attacking too. Allegedly, the entire incident was caught on camera. There's a tape of the entire incident, but it's never been released to the public. In the aftermath, Gotti was taken to the prison clinic, where the infamous photos of him were snapped. When questioned about his bruises, he stuck to his code and claimed he slipped and fell, nothing more. Gotti's attack was typical in Marion, where no one ever dared to snitch, not even with their dying breath. Gotti wasn't about to let Walter get away with it, so in days following the attack, he'd been seen having intense discussions with the AB. Gotti allegedly offered to pay to have Johnson killed, and Mills agreed to take the offer, the bounty standing at a rumored $500,000. Barry Mills himself was serving 4 consecutive life sentences and had little to lose. The method of the hit the AB settled on was a shooting. Mills allegedly wanted to show that the Aryan Brotherhood could get anyone, anywhere, and in any way they wanted. A message to the rest of the prison, considering the Mexican Mafia also stood behind John Gotti as well. The AB needed to get to Johnson first before a non-member did the job and collected the bounty. The AB was in the midst of a race war with the DC Blacks during all of this. giving even more significance to the hit on Johnson. According to prison reports, in '97, a bullet was slipped under Johnson's door to symbolize how he'd be killed. Johnson ended up being secluded, making it harder for the AB to get to him. In '99, the California AB ringleader, Ronnie Renegade Yandel, was set to attack Johnson, but that never happened either. Barry Mills allegedly told Yandel to abort the mission. It turned out that Yandel was up for parole soon and more useful to the gang from the outside. So despite living in constant paranoia after the assault on Gotti, Walter Johnson got away scot-free. Johnson was paroled in 2001 and ended up in D.C. 4 weeks after his release, he tried to get onto a subway station by jumping over a turnstile. Marlon Moraes, a 33-year-old immigrant from Guatemala and a cop of only 1 year, responded to a call about a fare beater. When he got there, he got in a scuffle with Johnson, was disarmed and shot dead. 4 weeks later, after a massive manhunt, a frantic Johnson was busted in a stolen car in Philly. He allegedly beat up 3 cops and tried to take one of their guns before being apprehended. He wound up in the D.C. jail after the arrest, one of the most violent city jails in the country. Not long after, he was stabbed 40 times in the recreation area and hospitalized in serious condition. No one knew the reason for the attack, but vindication for the beating on Gotti was a plausible theory. It was also alleged that the attack was possibly ordered by the COs given Johnson had killed a cop. Johnson survived, but later got life without parole. He now resides at ADX Florence with Chapo and them. As for Gotti, not too long after his altercation with Johnson, he was diagnosed with throat cancer and spent the next few years moving between his jail cell at Marion and a prison hospital. He died in June of 2002, never having avenged the man who tainted his legacy.
There is a general lockup throughout the institution. Prisoners have been fed in their cells. Tomorrow there will be no visitors at San Quentin. The institution is described as quiet but tense. The 6 people killed in this riot make it the worst incident of this kind in the modern history of San Quentin.
The most violent incident in San Quentin history left a grisly scene in the prison's adjustment center. The dead included 2 white inmates in the hallway, 3 guards in a bloody pile in one of the cells and in the prison yard. George Jackson, founder of the Black Guerrilla family. In a 33-minute slaughter, George Jackson and the San Quentin 6 would set the stage for one of the longest and most expensive trials in California history, and one of the most tense periods in Bay Area history. George Jackson's brief rise, fame, and demise came amidst a crucial time in racial relations, anti-war sentiments, and a war on communism. In the end, the communist visionary would never get the armed revolution he dreamed of. But what's the story behind the man they called the next Malcolm X? Young George's attitude and persona was shaped in Chicago's unforgiving ghettos. Despite having a 2-parent household, he grew up a wayward kid and a petty thief. Multiple arrests later, his dad moved the family to LA to get him away from all the crime. The Jacksons moved into the Watts neighborhood, but they quickly found out Watts wasn't much of an upgrade, and George picked up where he left off. In 1961, George was accused of stealing $70 from the gas station. Even though there was evidence of his innocence, his lawyer advised him to plead guilty due to his previous record, in exchange for a lighter sentence. At just 19, Jackson got 1 year to life, an indefinite sentence. Early on, he was a prison hustler, thug, and a bully. And over a few years, he got written up 47 times, killing his hopes of parole. All the write-ups landed him in solitary, where he spent a total of 7 years. After recommendation by a fellow inmate, he spent those 7 years studying the works of Marx, Lenin, Fanon, and Mao, some of the most influential communist thinkers. They completely transformed George's mind, and he slowly evolved from a thug to a theoretician. For Jackson, all the communist literature made him think of his own kind's struggle with institutionalized racism in the U.S., especially in an era of the Black Panther Party and the assassinations of MLK, Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton. In 1966, he started the Black Guerrilla family with W.L. Nolan, a close friend in Black Panther. The BGF was the first politicized black prison gang that was set on consolidating black power in prison and one day overthrowing the U.S. government. The means of doing so? An armed revolution. The Black Guerrilla family idealized and romanticized the idea of this. While he wasn't in solitary, Jackson ran intellectual study groups in the prison. He had massive influence over black inmates now, and eventually the authorities caught wind of this. Jackson's growing influence in the prison system and his new political consciousness is ultimately what kept him locked up. Before his death, he had served 10 years of his sentence, the longest anyone ever had on a one life. This new version of George Jackson was now understood to be the most dangerous man in the prison system. The 70s were a tense time in California prisons. 9 COs and 24 prisoners were killed between 1970 and 71, and most COs happened to be white. They had a reputation for pitting their races against each other. George and W.L. Nolan had been moved to Soledad in 1969. By then, Soledad was notorious for the race gangs that clicked up there: the Mexican Mafia, the Nuestra family, and the Aryan Brotherhood being the main ones. All the race hate made Soledad a hub for racial murders. On January 13, 1970, the prison exercise yard was reintegrated for the first time in months. But a race war between whites and blacks was brewing, and everybody knew it. A black inmate had been murdered months earlier, something they had to give back in blood. On the day of, just moments after the inmates convened on the yard, a brawl broke out. W.L. Nolan, who was a boxer as well, allegedly threw the first punch. From a guard tower, there was a shout, a few whistles, but no customary warning shot. Officer Opie Miller fired a rifle shot that pierced Nolan's heart. 2 more shots rang out, and 2 more black bodies dropped. A white inmate was shot and injured, but the 3 black inmates were the only deaths that day. The black prisoners were outraged, even more so when the murders were ruled justifiable homicide. 3 days later, an officer was beaten bloody, dragged up 3 flights of stairs, and thrown from the prison top tier. The inmates could hear his keys jangling through the air as he fell to his death. Officer John Mills was found dead on the ground floor. A note attached to him said, "1 down, 2 to go." The alleged culprits became known as the Soledad brothers. Jackson was understood to be their leader. They were brought to court in chains and shackles. There was little evidence to begin with. They were tried because all 3 men were connected to black militants. Soledad Brother, a book based on his prison letters and political essays, was published in the midst of the trial and became a global hit, giving Jackson thousands of fanatic supporters who championed his release or escape. Today his work is controversial and censored in prisons. The Soledad brothers were indicted for murder, and Jackson became the face of the Black Revolution. All the while, George had struck up a relationship with Angela Davis, a UCLA professor and Black Panther who admired him greatly. She grew close to his brother Jonathan as well. On August 6th, Angela would purchase multiple guns and rented a van for a daring plan the 3 hatched together. Jonathan Jackson was a 17-year-old student from Pasadena. He had never had any legal trouble prior. Over years of correspondence via prison letters, Jonathan grew to idolize George and his philosophies on race, society, and armed revolution. In his personal journals, he posed the question, "What would you do if it was your brother?" On August 7, 1970, at 10:45 a.m., Jonathan walked into a Marion County court with multiple guns under his long black trench coat. Once inside, he pulled an M1 carbine and shouted, "This is it! Everybody freeze!" When Jonathan invaded the court, George himself wasn't present. What he needed was hostages for George's release. He put a gun to the judge, Harold Haley's head, then gave a gun to James McClain, the defendant that day. He was joined by Rochelle McGee, a witness at the trial, and William Christmas, a prisoner freed from the holding cell. Judge Haley was then forced to call the local sheriff and convince the police to stand down. the four of the kidnappers gathered 5 hostages, bound them together with the piano wire, and taped a shotgun under the judge's neck. On the way out, they walked past several police officers in the hallway and a journalist that took multiple pictures of the events that day. Jonathan demanded that George and the Soledad brothers be freed by 12:30 that same day. He made sure to add, "We are the revolutionaries. The Soledad brothers must be freed for the cameras." But by the time they got to the van outside, they were surrounded by guards from San Quentin who were nearby doing shooting drills. Jonathan took the wheel and attempted to drive off even with all the rifles pointed at them. The plan was to get the hostages to an airport. Although the Marion County Sheriff ordered to let the van go, the sergeant from San Quentin didn't receive the order. To make it worse, James McClain sat in the front seat, allegedly fired a shot at the officers, kicking off a frantic next few minutes. When the shots from the van stopped altogether, the officers approached, finding Jonathan and McClain dead in the front seat and a bloody scene in the back of the van. Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas had snatched a gun off Jackson and fired at the kidnappers, starting off a close-quarter gunfight. In the chaos, the gun under the judge's neck went off, killing him, and William Christmas was shot dead. Gary Thomas was paralyzed for life from 3 accidental shots from San Quentin officers. Rochelle McGee was the only kidnapper left alive, and all the other hostages survived. In the aftermath, Angela Davis, who had bought some of the weapons, was subject to a nationwide manhunt. She was arrested in New York 2 months later and tried, but later acquitted. George claimed pride in his brother's revolutionary action that day. While awaiting their trial for the murder, the Soledad brothers were sent to San Quentin. They went straight to the Adjustment Center, the worst and most secure part of the prison. It was convicts versus COs in there, an atmosphere of inmates itching to kill the guards after years of abuse. A lot of them were in there for attacks or murders of guards to begin with. When Jackson first arrived, the black inmates saluted Jackson with a closed fist above their heads, a sign of the respect he had. Jackson's personality seemed to change after his brother's death. He became more introverted and confrontational. He wanted all the money from his book to go towards building a small militia for when he got out, because after 10 years in prison, he might actually have been deluded into thinking there was an actual shooting revolution on the streets. To add to his woes, he was facing the gas chamber for the murder of Officer Mills, something he went on to confess to during one of his prison visits. For months, Jackson allegedly pleaded with many of his visitors to bring him guns. He was now more eager to escape or die trying. He understood it was unlikely he'd never be freed. August 21st, 1971 was a warm, sunny Bay Area day, 3 days before the Soledad brothers' trial and days after Jackson completed his last book, Blood in My Eye. In the Adjustment Center, inmates could sense the tension in the air for days. They could tell something big was about to happen. Accounts of the events of this day varied, but one fact people could agree on was that there was a gun introduced into the Adjustment Center on August 21st. Stephen Bingham was a Yale graduate and Jackson's radicalized 29-year-old lawyer. Despite his visit being declined that very day, it was approved hours later. Miss Vanita Anderson accompanied Stephen Bingham. Neither had met the other before. She listed 1048 Peralta Street as her home address on the visitors list, the Black Panther Party headquarters. She wasn't allowed to be there, but the card's listing authorized visitors were in a different building that day, so no one checked her credentials. They found this after she had already been searched and made it to the visiting center, so she had to stay back. But before they split, she handed her briefcase to Mr. Bingham. The briefcase failed an electronic search, so the guard opened it and found a tape recorder, something lawyers often use in their meetings with their clients. He opened the back and saw batteries in it, so he let him through with the briefcase. A pivotal moment that day because it's believed that inside the tape recorder was a 9mm pistol and ammo. George Jackson was thoroughly searched, then followed a guard to the prison visiting center to meet his lawyer. Jackson was not handcuffed on his way to the visiting center that day. He had been on good behavior, and this was one of the hundreds of visits Jackson got as a prison celebrity. There was a window allowing guards to watch the visit, but no guards watched Bingham or Jackson that day. Jackson had over 250 visits with lawyers, family, and reporters over the 2.5 years that he was there, so this was very routine. There was also a slip between guests and prisoners allowing them to exchange objects. It's widely believed that Bingham handed Jackson the gun and ammo which Jackson hid under his watch cap. 15 minutes later, the meeting was over, and Jackson was escorted back to the AC for the last time. In roughly 40 minutes, he and 5 others would be no more. After the visit ended at 2:25 p.m., Officer Frank DeLeon escorted Jackson across the courtyard to the adjustment center. Upon entry or exit, every inmate had to strip naked and submit to a search. For the search, Jackson now stood between Officers McCrae and Rubiaco. Officer Rubiaco noticed something shiny in Jackson's hair. Officer McCrae saw the same thing and asked Jackson to take it out. As soon as Officer Rubiaco reached towards it, a bullet clip fell to the ground. With the guard stunned and confused, Jackson jumped to the side and whipped off the wig, from which he took out a pistol and clip of ammo. He then yelled, "This is it," and ordered all of the officers to lie face down on the floor. All 3 guards present were unarmed. Jackson now ordered Officer Rubiaco to get up and activate a switch that opened all 34 cells on the first floor. After Jackson had successfully released the convicts, he reportedly shouted, "The dragon has come," a famous quote from Ho Chi Minh, one of his idols. Accounts by prison authorities vary at this point in the story. After the cells were opened, 17 prisoners were freed, and the escape sparked a huge riot on the first floor. The guards were hogtied with electrical cords with their heads covered and were crammed into Jackson's cell. In the past, Jackson had called himself a blade in the throat of fascism, possible foreshadowing for the violence about to take place. With the razor attached to a toothbrush, Officers McCrae and Rubiaco had their throats slashed from ear to ear. Next, Jackson has been quoted saying, "It's time we found out if this piece really works," before shooting Officer De Leon in the back of the head. The 3 officers' bodies were thrown on top of each other. Minutes later, 2 white inmates were killed on Jackson's orders, their throats slashed, Frank Lynn and Ronald Kane. One of them was tossed on the floor of Jackson's cell, and the other was left in the corridor in front of the cells, allegedly because they refused to partake in the riot. Officers Krasness and Breckenridge were captured next after escorting an inmate back from the visiting center. Officer Krasness was strangled and slashed in the throat, and Officer Breckenridge had his throat slashed as well. They went on the pile with the other officers. Unknowingly, Sergeant Gere Graham walked in through the adjustment center front door to pick up the already deceased Officer De Leon for another assignment. He was captured, after which Officer Adams looked in through the door. He just let Sergeant Graham through. He saw George Jackson staring right back at him. A bullet from Jackson grazed his arm. Sergeant Graham was forced into his cell and shot dead moments later. The alarm was sounded at 2:40 p.m. after Jackson fired at Officer Adams. The other guards were now alerted and grabbed machine guns. Calls for help went out, and heavily armed California Highway patrolmen and Marion County Sheriff's deputies raced to the prison, blocking all access roads to it. In the cacophony of the fighting, sirens and screaming, George Jackson was walking back and forth in a stupor, possibly mulling over the next step of the plan. With the gun still in hand, Jackson has been quoted saying, "It's me they want." Jackson and Johnny Spain huddled near the door with homemade bombs in hand. In what can only be described as a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt, they ran across the yard towards a wall. A volley of shots came from their right from the balcony gunwalk. After the shots, Johnny Spain dived into the bushes in front of the prison chapel, where he hid until the riot was over. After a spirited 30-foot run, Jackson was shot in the ankle and stumbled to the ground. As he got back up, a second shot entered his lower back and exited the top of his head. That was the end of him. The bomb in his hand turned out to be just water and hydrochloric acid. The riot was meant as a distraction the whole time. Warden Nelson said that it took 25 minutes to get through to help regain control of the adjustment center. A machine gun burst of 4 or 5 shots was fired into the adjustment center, after which a convict shouted, "We've got hostages." A guard answered, "That won't do you any good," and fired another machine gun burst. Sensing the futility of the riot, the inmates gave up. After, the prisoners came out one by one, and the guards went into the building to find the officers' bodies piled up in Jackson's cell, with Officers Breckenridge, Rubiaco, and McCrae still alive in the heap of bodies. The floor of the cell was covered in blood, described as a layer literally 1 inch thick. Rumors are after the riot had ended, the inmates were repeatedly beaten by guards and officers for days after. On the Bay Area streets, there was outrage after George Jackson's death. A radio station was bombed, and a police officer was killed in a San Francisco police station in retaliation. The trial of the San Quentin Six, the main perpetrators, cost more than $2 million and lasted 16 months. The trial was dogged with claims of racism and conspiracy theories that the government planned Jackson's escape so that they could assassinate him. The Black Panther Party paid the attorney fees for 5 of the 6 defendants, though Hugo Pinnell chose to represent himself. Of the 6 defendants, Spain was found guilty in shooting deaths of guards De Leon and Graham. Pinnell was convicted of cutting the throats of guards Charles Breckenridge and Urbano Rubiaco, both whom survived, and Johnson was convicted of assaulting Breckenridge. There were no convictions for the killings of Officers Krasness, Lynn, or Kane. Drumgo, Talamontes, and Tate were found not guilty of all charges. Stephen Bingham fled the country for 13 years. He returned in 1984 to stand trial and was acquitted of all charges in 1986. Years later, after 43 years in solitary confinement, Hugo Pinnell was stabbed to death at a maximum security facility outside of Folsom, only 2 weeks after leaving solitary. Jackson's funeral was a revolutionary send-off, held by the Black Panthers and attended by 2,000 people. George Jackson's half-hour revolution and ill-fated escape attempt left a stain on the Black prison reform movement. It's remembered as more a slaughter than any kind of political statement. Without him, the Black guerrilla family lost track of its political mission. It's now a criminal gang. But just 2 weeks after, his death did inspire a much bloodier uprising all the way in Attica, New York, the worst in U.S. history. A man steps onto the yard. He knows what's about to happen. He's been set up. Across from him, another inmate, a rival gang member and sworn enemy. On this exercise yard, the tension is thick. There's no way out. Guards watch from above, not to stop the violence, but to enjoy the show. The first punch is thrown. A fight breaks out. Then, a rifle shot. A single crack from the tower. A bullet rips through flesh. Another body drops. This was life inside Corcoran State Prison. Between 1989 and 1995, at least 7 men died in this manner. Dozens more were shot, wounded, and maimed. Not by gang wars, but by the very guards sworn to keep order. Gladiator days, they called it. Prisoners were forced into fights, like slaves in Roman Colosseum. Except in this arena, there was no glory. Only blood, death, and cover-ups. But how did this happen? Who orchestrated it? And why did justice never come? When Corcoran State Prison opened its gates in 1988, it was designed to house California's most dangerous criminals. This was an era where politicians promised voters they'd be tough on violent criminals, and California spearheaded this movement. Corcoran wasn't just a prison, it was a symbol, a brutal response to public fear. Guards had near unlimited power to manage the chaos, and unchecked authority inevitably led to abuses. This wasn't a regular prison. This was Supermax. Inside its walls, the most ruthless gangs in California waged war. The Crips and Bloods, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, and Nuestra Familia. Each one fighting for control, power, respect, survival. Fights were inevitable, but stopping them, that was supposed to be the guards' job. Instead, some of them saw an opportunity, a way to control the inmates, be entertained, and kill without consequences. What started as breaking up fights quickly turned into something sinister. Guards didn't just allow fights, they staged them. They deliberately placed rival gang members together. They spread false rumors to ignite violence. They even placed bets on who would win. And when the fight escalated, that's when the real game began. The guards in the watchtower had a deadly role. Under California law, officers were authorized to use deadly force if an inmate fight became uncontrollable. But at Corcoran, the law became a license to kill. Some guards even treated it like a game. Before one shooting, an officer overheard laughing, saying,
"It's going to be done like season."
Of all the lives stolen in Corcoran's blood sport, one stands out: Preston Tate. February 23, 1994, Tate, a 28-year-old black inmate, was placed in the yard with a known rival. The fight started immediately, and then, just as planned, the tower opened fire. A bullet ripped through Tate's chest. He dropped, dead on the spot. But here's the twist. Witnesses later testified that Tate was already incapacitated when the shot was fired. They killed him anyway. His death wasn't an accident. It was a game. An FBI investigation later confirmed what many already knew. Tate was murdered. The biggest question: how did this happen for so long? The answer? The code of silence. Speaking out wasn't just discouraged. It was dangerous. Guards who questioned the brutality were threatened, blacklisted, forced to resign. But in 1996, two whistleblowers finally came forward. Steve Rigg, a former lieutenant, and other officers risked everything to expose the truth. They took their evidence straight to the FBI. Falsified reports, cover-ups, a pattern of killings. Whistleblower Steve Rigg didn't just lose his job. He lost friends, his reputation, and his sense of safety. Guards loyal to the corrupt system saw him as a traitor. Rigg later described sleepless nights, paranoia, and threats against his family, an unbearable price for telling the truth. But here's the catch. The system fought back. Despite a massive federal investigation, only a handful of officers were indicted. No one served time. Even Warden George Smith, who oversaw dozens of shootings, walked away scot-free. The Corcoran scandal forced some reforms. The integration policy, which forced rival gang members together in hopes of endearing them to one another, was scrapped. Gunfire policies was tightened. Perhaps the most unsettling truth about Corcoran's Gladiator days is how society reacted. For many, these prisoners, violent offenders, gang members, murderers, were beyond redemption. Public outrage was muted because deep down, society saw these abuses as rough justice. But this selective blindness raised a troubling question. Does cruelty become acceptable when it's directed at those we fear or despise? On February 2nd, 1980, what began that night as a routine head count spiraled into one of the most violent and destructive prison riots in American history. A 36-hour shitstorm that would shock the nation and lay bare the failures of a broken prison system. Built in 1956, the New Mexico State Penitentiary, aka Old Main, was hailed as a symbol of progress. Its dormitory-style housing was seen as efficient and cost-effective, though critics argued that it sacrificed security for savings. They were right. In the 1960s, the prison operated with relative stability, but by the mid-1970s, America was deep into its tough-on-crime era. Harsh sentencing laws swept the nation, driven by political pressure to appear uncompromising on law and order. Mandatory minimums and stricter parole policies meant that more men were being sent to prison, and for longer terms. For facilities like Old Main, this meant overcrowding, understaffing, and straining its infrastructure to the breaking point. Designed for 800 inmates, the prison soon held over 1,200. Men were crammed into communal dorms like livestock, stripped of privacy, dignity, and hope. Under these conditions, any minor slight or unpaid debt could get violent, and a system meant to rehabilitate instead became a gladiator school. As the years passed, it bred hardened prisoners with nothing to lose and everything to resent. Cell Block 4, known as the Snitch Unit, housed those labeled as informants, rapists, or pedophiles, the most despised factions of the prison hierarchy. Such a designation was often a death sentence. To wear the snitch jacket was to live in constant fear of attack. Guards weaponized this fear, using the threat of reclassification as leverage to extract info or cooperation from cell block 4 inmates. The rest of the prison would grow to hate them even more for this. As Friday night fell on February 1st, 1980, the tension inside the penitentiary was palpable. Inmates in dormitory E2, one of the most overcrowded and dangerous sections of the prison, began their nightly rituals, brewing hooch, arguing, and gambling. But something felt different that night. There was a quiet buzz of anticipation. Some prisoners whispered and darted their eyes from the guards to each other. Among the inmates in E2 was Gary Nelson, a relatively new arrival. He later recalled sensing the change almost immediately. The usual chaos of the dormitory felt controlled and deliberate. Men moved with purpose, their actions carefully calculated. The guards, perhaps tired from their shift or lulled into complacency by their routine, left the dormitory door unlocked, a catastrophic oversight. Shortly after midnight, at 1:09 a.m., 2 guards entered dormitory E2 for the final head count of their shift. Before they could react, inmates rushed them from the dark and tackled them. The guards were then stripped of their keys, radios, and uniforms within moments. With the keys in hand, the rioters wasted no time. Waves of inmates poured out of dormitory E2 and flooded the hallways. Their first target was the control center. Reinforced with bulletproof glass, the control center was built to withstand attacks, but using a fire extinguisher as a battering ram, they smashed through the glass after several attempts. The keys to every cell block and every gate were now theirs. The riot was now a full-scale takeover. Some prisoners pursued violent vendettas, and others joined the violence purely out of fear. At least 12 guards were taken hostage, stripped, beaten, and dragged to various parts of the prison. Next, the inmates made for the prison pharmacy. They looted in a frenzy, consuming anything they could swallow or inject. Liquid Valium, Demerol, and other powerful sedatives vanished in minutes. Some prisoners were so high they could barely stand, while others used the drugs to numb themselves to the grotesque violence they were about to inflict. Inside cell block 4, the snitch unit, the inmates knew what was coming. The names were already marked for death, armed with acetylene torches left behind by careless contractors. The rioters methodically burned through the steel bars of the cells. One inmate's skull was crushed by a piece of rebar driven straight through his head. Another was decapitated with a shovel. The acetylene torches were also used to burn men alive, reducing flesh to charred, unrecognizable remains. Sexual violence ran rampant as the rioters unleashed years of pent-up rage and twisted fantasies. Meanwhile, the guards taken hostage endured their own nightmare. Fires erupted throughout the facility. The gymnasium was set ablaze, flames devouring the wooden structure, and the smoke billowed into the cold desert sky, visible for miles. Inmates still high out of their minds seemed immune to the suffocating haze. By 4 a.m. on February 2nd, 1980, Old Main was a burning hellscape, controlled entirely by the inmates. In a desperate attempt to restore some order, a handful of prison leaders emerged from the prison, claiming to speak for the rioters. These so-called leaders stepped forward to present a list of demands to authorities gathered outside the prison's perimeter. They asked for things like pool tables, better food, and even steak dinners. Requests so absurd that they seemed almost laughable if the situation weren't so serious. These bizarre demands revealed just how fragmented and chaotic the prison's internal leadership had become. There was no single voice of authority, only a collection of criminals driven by desperation, greed, and revenge. Outside the facility, state police and the National Guard had established a heavily armed perimeter. But after communication with the FBI, a decision was made to delay intervention. Governor Bruce King hesitated to authorize a full-scale military intervention, fearing the potential for even greater loss of life. The guards were human bargaining chips, and every officer outside knew that one wrong move could trigger slaughter. Negotiations stalled almost immediately. The inmates' requests shifted between ridiculous and impossible, while showing no intention of releasing the hostages. Guards were paraded in front of windows, visibly bloodied and broken. The message was clear: if anyone dared to enter, no one would be left alive. By February 3rd, 1980, after 36 hellish hours, the New Mexico State Penitentiary was on the brink of total destruction as the fire continued to rage. With negotiations still failing, the authorities made the call. At exactly 1:30 p.m., a heavily armed SWAT team launched a full-scale assault on the prison. The mission was clear: neutralize the inmates, rescue the hostages, and reclaim the prison at all costs. Tear gas canisters were fired into the facility, sending thick clouds of nauseous smoke through the air. The choking fumes disoriented prisoners, many of whom were still high or dazed from the 2 sleepless nights of mayhem. As the SWAT team breached the shattered entrance, tactical units advanced methodically throughout the burning corridors. They moved past blood-smeared walls, dismembered bodies piled on each other, skulls caved in by blunt force trauma, makeshift weapons, and burned remains. The hostages were found alive but deeply and permanently traumatized. Many were beaten beyond recognition and stripped of their dignity in ways too horrific to recount. Some cried as they were escorted out, unable to process the sudden shift from certain death to salvation. The final death toll was 34 and over 200 seriously injured. Reporters and investigators would then comb through the wreckage for weeks, documenting every twisted atrocity of what had once been a correctional institution. The Attorney General's office took the lead, compiling a 200-page report that laid bare the rot at the core of the prison's administration. It wasn't just about what happened during those 36 hours. It was about the toxic environment that made such a meltdown inevitable. The report pulled no punches. It painted a damning picture of unchecked abuse, chronic understaffing, and dehumanization. The testimonies collected during the investigation were chilling. Survivors, both inmates and guards, described the riot in haunting detail. One former prisoner, identified only as Louise, confessed to taking part in the massacre inside cell block 4. He recounted how he used an acetylene torch to burn through cell bars and exact revenge on a man who had testified against him once. It took minutes, but it felt like hours, Louise said. Every second, I could hear him screaming on the other side, begging us not to come for him. Another inmate, nicknamed Spider, spoke with an eerie calm as he described the events. They deserved it, he said, referring to the men in cell block 4. Spider had targeted a fellow inmate accused of being a child predator. We used a torch to burn him, Spider said. Matter-of-factly, not all at once, just enough to make him feel it. First his legs, then his hands. By the end, he wasn't screaming anymore, just making these noises, like an animal. One guard held hostage but later released, described the aftermath in cell block 4 as a slaughterhouse. I saw bodies stacked like trash, the guard testified. Heads caved in. Some of them didn't even look like people anymore. One guy's face was peeled off. It was just muscle and bone. According to another guard, one inmate dragged a severed head in front of him and said, "This will be you by morning." After the riot, 18 inmates were tried for their roles in the violence. Some, including Carlos Charlie Garcia, Joe Tony Tollfree, and David L. Garcia, were sentenced to death, while others received life. The riot led to significant legal reforms in New Mexico's prison system, and the levels of morbidity during those 36 hours remain unparalleled in any American prison, before or since. This wasn't just a riot, it was a reckoning. In the arid stretches of New Mexico, just outside Santa Fe, the penitentiary of New Mexico, aka Old Main, rose from the desert like a monolith of misery and tension. Built to house the state's most dangerous criminals, this prison was notorious, not only for its high walls and barbed wire, but also for the chaos brewing within. Overcrowded, underfunded, and understaffed. It was an environment where desperation simmered daily. In 1980, the prison reached its breaking point in one of the deadliest riots in U.S. history. Over 2 days, levels of barbaric violence comparable to cartel-era Mexico would be seen. 33 dead. The riot laid bare the failures of the system, exposing the penitentiary as a place where men were not rehabilitated, only hardened. In this volatile setting, dreams of escape were never far from the minds of those imprisoned. Into this boiling cauldron arrived Daniel Mahoney, a man whose past was as violent as the prison's history, a serial rapist and a burglar. He was convicted of the brutal essay and murder of a schoolteacher in Florida. Mahoney was no stranger to prison life. His record included 2 previous escapes, one from a Maryland facility in 1980 and another from a Florida jail on Christmas Eve 1983. For Mahoney, each prison sentence was only a temporary obstacle, and as he adapted to life in the New Mexico pen, he began to hatch a new plan. His 5th escape attempt, one more daring than his previous ones, and relying on a loyal ally. That ally came in the form of Beverly Shoemaker, a woman who had fallen deeply, dangerously in love with Mahoney. Their relationship had started during his time in Florida, and by the time Mahoney was transferred to the New Mexico penitentiary, Shoemaker's infatuation had become a consuming force, one that blurred her sense of right and wrong. She didn't just love Mahoney, she was willing to do anything to be with him. including hijacking a helicopter and landing it on a level 5 prison yard. As the connection between Shoemaker and Mahoney intensified, so did their ambition. The two began to hatch an audacious scheme. What Mahoney lacked in resources, Shoemaker was determined to supply, pulling together the pieces of a plan that could rival a Hollywood production. The plan involved a helicopter, a method that spoke to the couple's flair for the dramatic. Shoemaker, posing as an ordinary client, would charter an aerospatial Gazelle helicopter from El Paso, Texas, a nimble craft known for its agility and speed. She hired a pilot, Charles Cheetah Bella, under the guise of a real estate tour in Santa Fe. Charles was a skilled pilot and had been part of the crews on the movies Rambo 3 and Extreme Prejudice. Once in the air, she would force the pilot to descend into the penitentiary's recreation yard, where Mahoney and 2 other inmates, Randy Lackey and Francis Mitchell, would be waiting. Timing and surprise were crucial. The penitentiary's exercise yard was active, with inmates moving around and guards on alert, but no one would expect an aerial approach. For Mahoney, the operation depended entirely on Shoemaker's devotion, Bella's piloting skills, and the perfect execution of the plan. On the morning of July 11, 1988, as the prison guards went about their routine, Shoemaker and Bella were in the air, heading toward the prison. As they approached, Bella, allegedly at the mercy of Shoemaker's gun, descended toward the penitentiary's recreation yard, where Mahoney, Mitchell, and Lackey were waiting. The helicopter hovered just above the yard, skimming over barbed wire and dodging guard towers. As Bella struggled to maintain control, the helicopter dipped lower. Guards on duty couldn't believe what they were seeing. A chopper within the prison confines, close enough for the inmates to make a break. Quickly, Mahoney, Mitchell, and Lackey ran toward the helicopter, climbing aboard as guards snapped out of their stupor and opened fire. Gunfire erupted from the towers, bullets slicing through the air and into the chopper's metal frame. Bella, desperately clutching the controls, dodged and weaved to avoid a deadly hit. The helicopter, riddled with bullets, rose above the prison walls, carrying the 3 convicts and Shoemaker to freedom. Guards scrambled to alert local law enforcement, sparking one of the most intense manhunts New Mexico had ever seen. Bella maneuvered the helicopter southward, flying at low altitude to avoid radar detection on the way to the group's first destination, a remote airstrip near Los Lunas, roughly 80 miles from the prison. The helicopter touched down on a dirt field, where the convicts hastily disembarked, but their freedom was already slipping away. Officers had anticipated the escape route, and a team of state police and federal agents had converged on Los Lunas, ready to intercept. Lackey attempted to steal a truck to continue the getaway, but was immediately spotted. A shootout ensued, ending with Lackey wounded and taken into custody. Shoemaker, meanwhile, was found hiding in a nearby hangar, still clutching the gun she had used to hijack the helicopter. With 2 captured, Mahoney fled on foot toward Rio Grande. For Mahoney, the escape wasn't over. He sprinted through the thick brush, determined to stay free. Bella and Mitchell flew off to another airfield, but were cornered shortly after and arrested with little resistance. As the sun began to rise on July 12, 1988, the adrenaline-filled escape was reaching its final moments. Mahoney, the last fugitive at large, desperately racing through the rugged terrain along the Rio Grande, but the combined forces of state police, federal agents, and K-9 units tracked his every move, closing in with precision. After hours of pursuit, the trail led them to a dense thicket beneath the bridge, just outside Albuquerque. There, hidden in the brush and fatigued from the night-long run, Mahoney was spotted. Exhausted and out of options, Mahoney attempted one last dash for freedom, but the officers moved in swiftly, apprehending him without further struggle. With Mahoney's capture, the dramatic breakout came to an end, but the fallout was only beginning. The audacious helicopter jailbreak was a shock to the state and the nation, revealing weaknesses that would demand swift action. The breakout may have ended with the capture of all 3 escapees, but the aftermath sent shockwaves throughout New Mexico's correction system and beyond. In the days that followed, the public and officials alike demanded answers, while news outlets picked apart every moment of the escape. How did multiple convicts escape a maximum security prison in a helicopter? As the investigation got underway, one of the biggest revelations was that despite past helicopter escapes from other facilities, no established policy existed to deal with such an event. Guards were unprepared, and crucial minutes were lost as they scrambled to respond. Reports confirmed that 2 prison guards had even froze during the breakout, failing to fire their weapons at the chopper as it took off. In response, protocols made specifically for aerial escape attempts were made. These changes extended beyond Old Main, with prisons nationwide implementing similar reforms. The escape also had a lasting impact on Charles Bella, the pilot who claimed he had been forced at gunpoint to participate in the escape. Authorities questioned the story, pointing to inconsistencies in the skilled maneuvers he had performed during the chase. Bella maintained his innocence, insisting that he had acted under duress, handcuffed to the controls, under the threat of Shoemaker's gun. Meanwhile, Shoemaker continued to declare her love for Mahoney. She claimed that her actions were an act of love, and that she would do it all again if given the chance. She captivated the public's attention and fueled a media frenzy around the case. To Shoemaker, the escape wasn't just a crime, it was a birthday gift for Mahoney. One last gesture of love for a man she saw was worth any sacrifice. Bella would be later cleared of any wrongdoing, while Mahoney resumed his life sentence, and Shoemaker spent 33 months in a New Mexico women's prison, where she kept a shrine of Mahoney throughout, a bulletin board with 15 of his photos. She was deported to Canada shortly after her release. Considering all the prison reforms and sensationalisms that followed the breakout, the pair had set a new standard in the world of romance and jailbreaks. Shoemaker and Mahoney, New Mexico's Bonnie and Clyde.